My guest, his name is Philip Watt, and he is an artist. He is a musician. He is an actor. He is also an educator, teaching students how to be better students. This is the Gold Medal Mindset, where we bring you all things winning in business, sport, and life. I'm Dr. Jason Richardson. Get ready to mine for gold as we challenge your perception to change your results. I'm very excited for today's guest. We're going a bit academic. We're going a bit artistic. Artistic, not autistic. And the reason why I know him, full disclosure, full transparency, is he is married to my sister.
The luckiest man alive speaking to you. Thanks
there
for
we
having
go.
me.
There we go. So Philip Watt, I've actually been wanting to have you on the show for a while because you're such a good conversationalist, and I felt like this being the gold medal mindset that I've had gold medal athletes on the show. I've had the talkers, the speakers, the entrepreneurs on the show. I just figured your insight into this whole bit would be really great for my audience. What do you say?
I say gold medal mindset. I'm very excited to be here to talk to your, I think it's in the billions now. You have billions of people probably, or at least billions of cells, maybe millions of people listening to.
We have thousands. I'd like it to be millions, but definitely billions of neurons firing when we get into the content. I actually did play with using the word metal versus medal, play on words, because it's in the arena that we test our metal. It's when you go take the test that you test one's metal. However, my marketing consultant said that probably wouldn't be a good thing to do. So it's gold medal mindset.
That's great. Because the winner receives the medal. The metal, everyone has metal, especially fighters and winners. They have that extra metal. Mm-hmm. But I think you got the great. It's a wonderful sort of inspiring name for a conversation.
There we go.
And you're talking about the mindset. So for me, what are you curious about as far as, because you know me pretty darn well, as far as like, what about my mindset are you interested in? And, how can I add to the conversation?
Well, I'll never forget, and I brought this up before and I'll bring it up again because the audience doesn't know. But at your wedding, you had many people speak. And then at the end of everyone's speech, and it was really amazing because everyone who spoke had a really great way of expressing their connection to you and the relationship, not only just to you, but to your couplehood.
Right.
And it was, whether it was through dance or through a story or through song. And then it was time and then, Leela, my sister, got up and spoke and said thank you, and it was very cordial and gracious, as she always is. And then you spoke, and you pulled out a little crumpled piece of paper, or maybe I don't know if it was crumpled, but it was little. It wasn't big. And you wrote 2 sentences.
Oh,
you captured it in 2 sentences, and I'm thinking, okay, he really does have command of his thoughts and, more importantly, the language he uses. And I'm a stickler with language, but I also recognize I use too many words. So what interested me and what I thought would be interesting with this conversation is to just speak about that a bit, along with your acting, because that's the other thing. You're doing a lot of things. You're acting, I believe, directing now, kind of, sort of, maybe, for sure. You're a jazz musician and you're an educator. I mean, you're working with young minds, and I've seen you in action when you're on vacation or something. You're definitely living a laptop lifestyle, which I think a lot of people are struggling or to find a way to do. So all of those components really lend to this show. Because we have a lot of listeners and we have athletes who are looking to transition out. What am I going to do next? We have entrepreneurs who listen to this and say, hey, wow, how does an athlete handle pressure? How does an athlete go into this? So you kind of encompass both of those things to where you're living a life that you've designed, or at least taking advantage of a life that has evolved.
Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch that you threw at me. So let's start with the thing with the groom speech. For some reason, I had it in my mind that the groom really doesn't say much, and I sort of thought, and I didn't have a reference for it, like a book or anything, but it was just an idea in my mind and so I went with that, and I went with he doesn't say much, the groom, quote unquote, doesn't say much, so here's a few words, and I really appreciate that you remember that. I have that piece of paper somewhere. Onto the other stuff, as far as you said, the laptop lifestyle. It's funny because I've always sort of disliked laptops. I always have a desktop.
I know.
Uh,
But you've done sessions in my office space when you were
well, I
visiting me.
know. And you could say I'm just a big laptop mooch, you know? It's like when I travel, I'm like, yo, can I borrow your laptop? I got to talk to someone.
But that's even more powerful. It's like I don't like laptops. I don't even know if I'm calling it a lifestyle. I'm being somewhat draconian with the type of computer I use, and then to travel and just say, yeah, I'll use someone's lap. But that's immensely powerful. Like that you have a business to where you don't even need your own computer to conduct commerce.
True. Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's really, yeah, that started after I taught in New York City public schools for 2 years. I wanted to go back into acting. So I started to tutor, and I get on the New York subways, and they get on the Metro North, and they go up to Westchester, sometimes into Stamford or Connecticut. Boy, it was a lot of traveling. And then when you get to the client's house, you say hello to the children. There's a plate of food there, and it's super spicy and delicious, and you just eat it up. And then as you're teaching, you're like, okay, where did all the blood in my brain go that I need to teach with right now? Oh, yeah, I'm digesting. Okay, so anyway, one rainy morning in Brooklyn, I woke up and I was like, oh, man, I can't get there. And I checked Skype, and I called up the parent in Rye, New York, and I said, can we try Skype today? This is back in 2009. They're like, great. And basically, I traveled a little bit more to teach 101 after that. But basically, that was when just folded into the Skype world. Now, every year I go and I meet students. We have dinner, we meet, we spend time together. But most of my students, it's just from my office into their living room kind of thing. And that's been incredible. I would say my second year of teaching, I remember walking up the stairway and looking at a piece of graffiti or something, some detail in the paint. And I said, wow, I see this same thing every day at the same time. And there was something about that I didn't really like. I really loved being in the public school for 2 years, 3 counting student teaching, where at the end of the day, you think about, wow, I've had 250 or 300 interactions, and they've all been with individuals as you're running that marathon of the particular school year. That's so rich. And I do miss that a little bit about being in the public school. But being an independent educator has been really, really sort of, at the same time, intuitively easy. Like, there haven't been many obstructions to creating my business as a English tutor. And also,
that's
truly
code.
challenging.
I'm interrupting. I'm a bit weird
Sure.
that way. But that's code for when you say intuitively is easy. I'm picking that up as that's code for I'm good at it. And I know you're humble, but that's you're good at it. It's easy because you are good at it.
I'll give you an example from public school. My first freshman class, so I taught 2 years, and the principal moved me to teach sophomore year. So I had the same students for 2 years, which was amazing. But my first class as teaching freshmen, I was almost, you could say, a freshman in the sense of teaching high school, and I was teaching freshmen. I was sort of winging it, and I was a little bit like, I know I just have this degree and everything, but boy, there's a lot of kids, and oh, here's a crate of books, and let's just start reading the book. So with that, I was winging it, but I followed my instincts with the book. Everyone had a book in hand, and we got to it. And that was sort of like what I had to make happen, rather than spending a lot of time with planning, with mini lessons, with all of the kind of things that they were teaching you at the time. Now, did it work all the time? Definitely not. Classroom management.
Define work. What do you mean work? Like work as in, did they get the lesson? Work as in, it wasn't impactful?
Huh. Well, that's like the beginning of my teaching career. And it does involve so much more than just material and transmission, one student at a time. But classroom management is its own animal. That's why first year teachers, second year teachers, you're really going through a gauntlet of fire. I mean, you can be prepared for it in teaching programs, and you have your student teaching, but then when it's your classroom, then it's a quite dynamic moment for you being a teacher, in the sense of becoming a teacher. Which, when you become a teacher, there's almost a persona that rises up, and over time that persona matures, and teachers become really good. And at the beginning, the same persona is there, but it's a little bit more, almost like a hurricane is being blown around you. And it's like, you're still a teacher. You still have that young teacher persona. It's still intact. It's not like you're being blown to bits, but it's quite different. And, if you take the idea of the persona that a teacher develops over time, and then you compare it to what an actor experiences as they go from character to character, and then over a period of time, they go from type to type. They start to play different types. These are two different ways of looking at, I think, how you get good at what you do, and how your persona and your personality accommodates that.
You've done film, you've done music videos, you've done theater. How does your acting and preparing for roles, how did that inform your teaching?
Well, when you've played characters, you've memorized, you've done blocking, extensive rehearsals, and then you have your opening night where it all comes together. So in that sense, you're an interpreter of the author himself or herself. So that's such direct engagement with works of literature. I started acting when I was 15 and then went to conservatory. So my foundation as an adult is being an actor. When I was out of college for 7 years, after about 7 years, I had a feeling of there's got to be more that I can do professionally than what I'm doing right now, because, I didn't make it as a runaway star kind of thing. Like, you just, boom, job after job after job. I had an agent and all that stuff, but they weren't sending me scripts. You know what I'm saying? So at a certain point I said, hey, actually, I stumbled upon Bard College's website, and I read their Master of Teaching, their administrator's letter to the world, and I basically was like, that sounds incredible, and I want to do it. And I applied to Bard only, and I got in there, and I went there. And then as I became a teacher slowly, I went on honorary withdrawal from the unions and just focused on teaching. I noticed that they're quite complementary, very different, though, as far as the way that one matures as a teacher and the way that one matures as an actor. It's different. Teaching, you sort of do have one persona that over time becomes exquisitely, hopefully, more and more capable. Mm-hmm. You have to speak less. You start to come up with brand new material because no one else has come up with it, and so you coin stuff. That comes after some time, and that's right down your alley. It's right in your zone. As far as
I call it holding the space.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to hold the space, and that is that is a certain. I'm not gonna use the word power. Someone said something very wise to me. They said everyone has power, but not everyone is powerful. But
And when you hold the space as a teacher,
that's
it's
powerful.
It's a contractual thing,
and it's a powerful thing, right? It's a powerful thing. So, and it does come with time, and some people are more gifted at it, and it comes quicker or sooner than others. But I think that's maybe, in my opinion, how your acting might have informed it, is because you were at the very least used to being out there, right? Even though you were playing a character, there's a certain sense of vulnerability and openness, and the fact that eyes are on you and it's on you to do this thing somewhat well, right? Execute. I think you being acutely aware of that, even on the teaching stage, dare I say, I think that informed you a great deal, at least from a cellular level, as to how you bring it when you teach. Because even when you were reading to my kids for fun, I'm pretty good at it, by the way. I can get into character, but it was better than reading Rainbow. I mean, they were like, they were really enthralled, like riveted by your reading of whatever book it was you were reading. At
was that the
8
Paul
p.m.
Revere?
Yeah, and it was just they couldn't get enough. It was as if they were watching TV.
Gee whiz, that's great to hear. And you know what?
That's why you're on the show, man. That's why you're on the show.
And it's fantastic, because this past fall I've noticed my teaching persona is becoming even a little more out there, and also my voice, like what I do on the regular. And I'm sort of a little surprised at this, but on the regular I will be doing, when we read aloud the novel or whatever, or when we go into the expanding sample sentences, helping them to write a more creative, commanding sentence using that new word. Mm-hmm. Exactly what you're talking about. When I was reading the kids' book about Paul Revere, going into the energy of the story, the importance, the urgency, who Paul Revere is as a person, also what he represents for the U.S. sort of rebel spirit of, don't tread on me.
That's right.
I'm not talking about the Rebs. I'm talking about the original revolution, where it was just like, we got this. Let's do this. And then, how he rode through the towns, and he busted his chops to get where he needed to be to do what he needed to do. And he was a father of many children and, busy man. So I think that came through probably in some of the voices and the delivery. But yeah, back to your original question, which has to do with acting and teaching. I'm just so happy that I did follow through and get that master's from Bard. When I got there were 11 people in my English department. I was the only male member of that group. And also I was the only member who didn't really have a bachelor's of English. I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dramatic Performance. So I could read a book, I could talk about a book, but I was learning a lot of stuff just by being around them, as far as the sort of protocol or practicum, I guess, the practical foundation of being an English teacher. So that was an interesting, I had to learn pretty fast at that point. I took just enough creative writing classes and poetry classes when I was getting my BFA so that I qualified for an MA in English. It's been fantastic to be able to start a business. That's part of the American dream, so to speak. It's one of the things that people do it all over the world, but for some reason we think it's an especially American pastime, is to be your own boss. I did go to small business counseling here in San Francisco.
I love it.
Yeah, for a couple of years. 2 years, I think. Go downtown. Eventually,
I'm actually a little offended about that. I mean, you being married into the family you're into, you went to small business counseling.
Well,
I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you went out there and sought the information, but geez.
You know what? Well, to your point, my wife, Leela, your sister, she basically drugged me down there.
Okay.
I was like, this is like, I can do this, blah, 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 one day. And it was sort of unpleasant because we're walking to the train station and, just not in the best mood. And then you get down there. But anyway, that was just the first impression. I was sort of like being led to water. Finally, I drank the water to a certain point. But this is interesting because the Small Business Association and the American expectation for a business is basically, okay, once you have your 18-page business plan written, once you have the research, competition, once you have really refined who you are, and you're in business, of course, then you need to be looking 5 years ahead. And part of the process, I think that's just assumed, is that you want to expand exponentially. You want to have...
thank you so much for bringing that up, because I was about to talk about that.
Okay.
Naturally you said, working with the students, and there's 300 or 400, 250 to 350 students that went around, and it was impactful. And then you're working with students one-on-one. The immediate thing that came to my mind, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners, especially entrepreneurs, is scalability. Even in my business, it's all about scalability, and you have people building these, essentially these funnels. It's almost like the internet of business on the internet is one big MLM. It's like, well, buy what I'm selling, multi-level marketing. And and for me, do I want to reach the masses? Yes. Am I going to appeal to the masses right off the bat? Probably not. So I offer a high-level service to individuals, and then based on their appreciation of that service or the value I give them, they then refer me to either more individuals or a group of individuals that then want my services scaled out. So it's kind of a descending model, if you will. But I think, but you're right. It's almost like, just because I make burgers, do I have to be McDonald's? And the answer is no.
Yeah, exactly. And, during the recession, I think it was maybe 2011, right when, as a culture, we were basically able to say, wow, the worst of the recession has basically passed. At least we thought it had at that point. I think maybe it had. I remember an article from the New York Times, and it profiled 3 businesses. I think they were all in Manhattan, and they had an ethos in their business which corresponded to I learned from it, and then I sort of adopted it. And their ethos was, we don't need to grow. We don't need to shrink. If we shrink a little, no big deal. If we grow a little bit, fine. But year by year, they just stayed steady. And the study showed that during the recession, they were fine. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, right? Now, that's just one little aspect of it. Personally, my approach to it has been, when I got the small business counseling, to a degree, it helped me for sure, because I was able to identify as a business owner, entrepreneur. I went through a couple stages where I was looking for people to hire. So and I went right back to BARD, MAT program, Masters of Art in Teaching. I wanted to get people from my school. And I had the applicants. We were going to start to work together. I was going to start to get these other things in motion. And then it didn't happen for whatever reason. And so about a year and a half ago or so, I was like, I just like what I'm doing, and I like it at this level. I like that it's word of mouth. For me, an ideal day, if I can teach 3 hours, maybe 2 on a day where I have a lot of other things going on, that's fantastic, because teaching feels good. Teaching is something where it is work. I have to be rested. Believe me, I take a nap before I start almost every day. But it's like, I like the process of it, the interaction, the craft, the material. My business is small, and I'm not sure if I want it to grow bigger.
Well, it sounds to me like you're focusing on delivering for lack of a better term, a bitchin' product. I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
that's the deal. One of my favorite people to listen to or read is, and I'm ashamed to butcher his name, but I'm going to take an attempt. But his name is James Altucher or Altucher
Okay.
or Altucher, but it's James Altucher, and he's
Okay.
brilliant. And I was reading something to the effect that he wrote that, and it talked about essentially how people essentially talk themselves out of doing quote unquote what they say they want to do.
Huh.
And I even caught myself doing that as a speaker or as a therapist back in the day, essentially turning down the same type of work for this other type of work that was the same. But then again, since you're an actor, I'll bring it up. You know that show Behind the Actors or the Actors Studio or something like
Yeah.
that?
With James Lipton.
There you go, that show. A
Yeah.
great conversation. But there was one of the guests was on there, and one of the students in the show asked about movie acting or acting on film or being able to get work, working as an actor. And he said, there's plenty of work out there. You can act more than you think. You don't have to just act on Broadway or in Tinseltown. There's community theater. There's you could put on your own play. There's off Broadway. There's a million ways. He just started rattling off ways to act, and so I love that because there's different ways to teach. There's different ways to educate. For me, there's different ways to speak. I have this podcast. Even if I'm working one-on-one, I'm speaking. If I'm speaking in front of a crowd of 1,000, I'm speaking. But I'm doing what I do, which is speak. Whether it's 1, 1,000, 1,000,000. You're teaching, whether it's 1, 200, 500, 1.5, I don't know. So
That's it. Yeah.
It's the deliver. But I love that you've just boiled it down and that you're so confident in your conviction to just deliver the dang product.
Right. And, I think that's connected to, because not everyone are teachers. Some people are really, highly capable, more so than a teacher in the same subject, but the teacher is a better teacher of the subject. Some people don't have the volition to connect at a level with another person who needs to know things. They don't have the volition to be thorough, to have different tacks to get to the goal, to be humorous, to have, So if you identify as a teacher that it makes you feel good and you get better at it over time, then you're probably that. And I don't know what classification of person it is, but I think it's sort of a mystery because I know that I do have a teaching element, and it was that element going to waste in my late 20s that caused me to stumble upon this Bard College website. And I said, that's what I need to do because that's a part of me that is just sitting around,
Wow.
So,
You taught so somehow you learned to listen to the voice too, your voice.
yeah,
That's
true.
good. Not many people act on that. There's that thing in their gut telling them they probably should. They probably could be whatever, but they ignore it. It's kind of like when you're people who are in a new relationship and they see those red flags and they ignore them. And then 5 years down the road, it's like, yeah, we're getting divorced.
Or if they see red flags and they don't address them with the person,
How about that?
that would be because maybe they're not red flags. Maybe they just need to be, diffused. I call it a negative bonding pattern. That's when both people.
Now who's the psychologist? I like
I know,
that.
right? Both people are trying to be themselves and trying to get to a good place, but they're both in a pattern that is full of. They've fallen into something that's. It needs help. It needs to be diffused, and the two of them can't do it. And that's when we call it love, sir.
Wow. Look at that. You're coming with some deep marriage therapy there. That's good. But those negative bonding patterns happen in the office space. They happen at schools. They happen on sport teams. And then, of course, in romantic relationships. So real quick,
Sure.
because we got right into the conversation as we normally do, what kind of teaching do you do?
Oh, okay, sure. It's basically grade 4 through 12. It's one-on-one. I have about 20 students a week. So on any given day, I will have a 4th grader, an 8th grader, and a 12th grader. At certain times of the year, I have a lot of 12th graders because it's admissions to college. It's sort of the soup to nuts concept. I have my own AP English support units on rhetoric from author studies, which is something that most people don't get into until they're in college, where you read 3 books by the same author, or you read, not all of them, maybe a lot of the poems of a poet, and then you have a final assessment about that body of work. Constant grammar. So whenever students are reading the material that I'm assigning them, obviously there should be some vocabulary there that they don't know because they should be reading challenging material. So they do vocabulary sample sentences. As soon as they write their sample sentences, that's the part of the lesson where we get into the grammar. So I do about 20 minutes of grammar at least every lesson. And I'm sort of a self-taught grammar person, as I said before. From acting school to a master's of English, there wasn't much grammar in acting school. You went to fencing class, or you went to makeup, or you went to your acting class. You memorized thousands of words, of course, but you didn't have anybody crossing your T's and dotting your I's for you. Not that I had a problem with that, but it was just discussing grammar, getting into the nitty-gritty, which I really like now. I find it to be it's like puzzles. You're dealing with types of sentences and types of phrases and all this kind of stuff. So we always do that. And my clientele has been word of mouth. Here's how it happened. I was teaching acting for teens in New York City off of Broadway in the Bowery in 2009. One of my students, she actually told me later she wasn't even a teen when she was in my class. She was 12 years old, precocious young lady. She took the class. Then a year later, her mom had me come up to Westchester, said, please tutor my child in English. I know you're an English teacher. And then about 6 months later, please help my child get into private high school. That was Brearley, which is right across the street from Dalton, which is an Upper East Side girls' school. She got in, and the mother said to me, Philip, would you like me to be your agent?
Pimp?
Or
there's, yeah. Pimp.
I'm from St. Louis, so pimp, James. Nelly, what's up?
It's okay.
But you've heard of a Chinese handcuff, right?
With the fingers or something like
Yeah.
that?
You stick your finger in, you can't get it out.
Okay.
Now, let me just use this image for a second to describe our relationship. She was not able to inform any of the people that she was, quote, pimping me out to, that she was receiving any profit, because part of the Chinese culture is, a great part of it is recommendation. This is the place to go. You go here to eat. When you travel here, make sure you go to this place. It's very, it's a strong immigrant culture in the U.S. because, number one, the language carryover is actually quite more significant than other immigrant cultures. Also, the Chinatowns, the country over, these are strongholds of like 99% authentic China, like just boom. I mean, you go down here in San Francisco, the culture is like really, really, really strong. And you could say almost like sealed. There's a sealed element to it. Sealed off, I wouldn't say that, but sealed in a good way with itself. So there's a recommendation culture that happens with it. It's very strong. She knew that. I didn't really know it. I was like, great. Okay, so I started to teach all Chinese American students. That's basically what's happened. I've had maybe 3 or 4 Caucasian students, or people who are not Asian first-generation Americans. And so if you look at my student roster, it's all very American-sounding first names. and then straight up Han Chinese last names, and that's just my niche.
But you are obviously open to teaching anyone.
Yeah, even small green people with hands that look like badminton rackets who live on Mars. I mean, bring them on down to Earth, and let's get them a Skype account and get to work.
Cool. So on this show, I like to ask some regular show questions. You've already given the listening population some great gold nuggets. What's your biggest win?
My biggest win, I think, is on stage or in front of the camera, because that's my biggest win is about to come up. Let me just be a regular old actor at this point. I got this play coming up. It's opening second week of February here in San Francisco. It's about Chet Baker. It's got a cast of 14. That's a quartet and a cast of 10. I've worked with the playwright to develop the script. I've been working on Chet Baker's solos for this project for at least a year and a half. The play is set during 1954 in LA. Chet Baker's about to break out on the scene. This play is going to be a little bit more important than the last one. This one is about racism in business. It's about in the 1950s, the way that people profited on the musical genius of the African American. And it's not to condemn talented white players. It's not to condemn anyone at all.
I love it. Your biggest win is about to happen. That's good.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the first on this show for someone to say that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there you go. You're trend setting. Oof. That's a win for me.
Boy.
All right. Last question. And I do my best to ask everyone this. What is one thing you wish every human being knew?
Okay. One wish every human being would know at a certain point in their life, or like, is it a realization they attain, or is it something that they innately have? Just a knowledge.
Go with your gut on that.
Okay, I would say in their lifetime, that every human being would realize that they're migrating through a body, that they've been born before, that they're going to be born again. That at one moment they would have a real experience of identification with soul rather than body.
Dude, that begs a lot more questions. You know that, right?
Hit me.
I don't know if I have any. So it's like metaphysical, existential, maybe a bit religious. I guess my question would be, the importance of that, because when somebody recognizes that they are migrating through a body, what is the importance of that?
The importance is, because
then that would mean what?
Well, you know how they say that we only use a certain portion of our brains?
Yeah, they say a lot.
You could take that and imagine that when you're in your human condition, full-fledged, you're a champion, you're standing on the dais, you're getting your gold medal. Even then, there's still more knowledge, more wisdom, more almost like omnipotence that you are, even at your highest glory.
Yeah, there's moreness. Yeah. You're more than that win still.
Yeah, because every human being, and like this is true with musicians, every musician, even at the top level, if you get into a conversation with them, they will tell you that they're still so much in awe of music, and they're always learning. There's always that childlike approach to more, right? And so I think that at that moment, here, let me refine my thing. So at one person in their life, they have a moment where they feel the most charged, the most empowered. At that moment, if they could have an understanding additionally that when they do die, they're going to be amplified to an extent to which at that moment of their glory, they know that this life is just one of many lives, so to speak.
Wow. Well, there we go. I had no idea the conversation would go that way.
But talking talking to a champion, you think big. So
that's
Jason,
big. Those are some big thoughts. That's like pull out some old philosophy books. It's existentialism and stuff. And
next time you should read up on your Schopenhauer, and then you can just blast that whole thing out of the sky, because he was one of the great iconoclasts of philosophy. He was just tear down your argument, riddle it through holes. Wait, riddle it full of holes. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, in my limited experience, I don't work so hard to be right anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I think that's might be part of my issue with the world of academia to a degree, is that when you're talking about the gentleman who would rip apart my argument and show me the don't get me wrong, I know there is right and wrong, I know there's good and bad, and I definitely am good with confrontation and drawing a line in the sand. However, I generally don't try to, it's just, I guess I shouldn't say try to, it's just not as important for me in my interaction with other people to be right. Whatever that means. For me, I'm kind of like wanting to know where they're coming from, why they're coming from that way, and I like to provide a different way or option or perception, and they then can choose. And then if they're really being an idiot, then I'll tell them.
I think what you just said, if I can bring it back to the thing about the will to teach, that some people aren't teachers, and that's cool, but those who are teachers, they have something that they need to do. What you just said sort of exemplifies the core for me of teaching, which is teaching is the learner's profession. So you enjoy learning. You're always learning. You have no problem with that. So if you don't know something as a teacher, or if you're not able to formulate it perfectly, that's okay, and you can share that vulnerability with a student, and students innately respect it. They just see you more as a human being, because there's the opposite of that, which is when you go to elementary school or middle school and you see your calcified teacher, they've been doing the same thing for years, everything is rote. You can never imagine them going to Thanksgiving. You can never imagine them going on a plane. You can't imagine them outside of the educational construct. And that's sort of what I like to work against, is the teacher learns with you when he or she needs to. Obviously, it's a contractual thing. The teacher needs to provide information. Sometimes teachers can feel like, wow, all I do is I stick a shovel into the sand of knowledge, and then I just throw it over here in front of the students so they can have some, right? I mean, that's sort of what you're doing as a teacher. You're just providing information. But as teaching develops, and as you as a teacher develops, when you express that type of humility, then I think it's sort of proof that you're a natural teacher and that you really enjoy it.
I think that's a compliment. I'm going to take it that way.
Yeah. Teaching is the learner's profession. Yeah.
Cool. And just so the audience knows, Philip has written emails to where I just don't understand them, and I have to ask because they're so damn smart. Anyways,
I hope they weren't about politics.
They were a little bit about politics. We may have to do, regardless, we should do that show. And not so much about right or wrong, left or right, but just the behavior to it, and just kind of the fundamental schemas, the thought processes and the discourse and the narratives that people tend to gravitate toward. And that would be a very interesting show, because obviously in politics, especially with an election, there is a winner and a person who didn't win the election. So,
and I think you and I have talked about that. I know it's we have to go here in a sec, but I did want to say that you and I had fruitful conversations during this past election, which, by the way, was very, very difficult to have fruitful conversations during an election where the debate was poison. The rhetoric had poison in it. And so a lot of people were unable to have fruitful conversations because they were unable to take the poison out. They were unable to see that. And I just wanted to throw that out there. So,
all right. Well, cool. To be continued on the Gold Medal Mindset. Mr. Philip Watt, that's W-A-T-T, like a light bulb going off.
Boom.
How can people find you? Where can they find you?
Well, get your pencils out, everybody. It's really pretty simple. It's MrWattsLiteraryServices.com. And that's Watts, obviously, without an apostrophe. So MRWATTS, literaryservices.com.
And he has an awesome logo.
Thanks. And, I have some other websites, Chetty'sLullaby.com, DylanThomas19.com, PhilipWattCasting.com. You can .com it for a little while if you want.
Okay. So there you go. Are you accepting more students, or are we at our limit?
Yes. I'm looking for students who have an extra hour and a half, 2 hours a week to read, to write, to do the work that I assign them. I assign them work based on what I read before taking them, what their book list is currently, and also what kind of person they are. So after having a first lesson or two, I might discover something about them and then have an amazing book for them that they'll really, really like. So.
Nice. That's cool. So there you go. High engagement, MrWattsLiteraryServices.com. Thanks, Philip. I will see you in a couple weeks. I think we have a ski trip planned. So
yes, we're very excited.
We can have more discussion on the chairlift.
It's going to be fantastic, and I look forward to seeing your whole family, too.
Cool. Gold Medal Mindset is brought to you courtesy of IPD Seminars. Learn the mindset and best practices to crush any limit. Visit IPDseminars.com for more information. We also like to thank Life Advantages Prep, making school not suck for high school kids already immersed in sport, tech, the arts, or whatever their passion may be. For more information on winning at LAP, please visit lifeadvantagesprep.com. Thanks for taking the time to mine for gold on the Gold Medal Mindset podcast. Let's keep the conversation going on Twitter at RealDrJRich or on the web at drjasonrichardson.com. That's drjasonrichardson.com. Take care and have a great day.